Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of IGEL Weekly. Today is November 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got a big group with us today, but I've really got a special guest. Let me hit our normal host real quick. So Patrick Toner is with us. Patrick, this must be like your, 15th, 20th episode?
Something like that. But this is definitely the fullest episode and probably the biggest one. So glad to be here today.
Yeah, big conversation here, big announcement, long time coming. You'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. Chris Feeney is our sales engineer for the channel. Chris, how's it going?
It's going great. We're on the eve of Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States, and it coincides with a huge holiday tournament going on, World Cup. We were chatting about that earlier. So a lot of exciting things happening in the world at the moment. But today's topic is near and dear to a lot of people, but very excited to have a very special guest on today. I'll let you introduce who that is, Andy.
Sure. Well, and I've got Sebastien Perusat as well with us. Sebastien is king of the community. Sebastien, how's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, Andy. Hope you as well. Besides the World Cup, we have some excitement regarding the 5th anniversary of the Agile community coming up in December. So that's causing a lot of preparations on my side, some funny reports to do, but we will have that on an upcoming podcast. So I was just thinking that it's the 2nd year now in the row that I'm joining your podcast and still enjoying it. So thanks for having me joining this evening.
I'll tell you, I every once in a while I check a podcast just to make sure that the numbers and things all line up. And an hour later, I realize I'm still listening. I somehow enjoy listening to it over and over again. It's kind of weird, but I learn every time I do it. Learn
Same
more.
Here.
Well, we have our special guest, Mr. Jed Ayres, who has been leading the IGEL efforts here in the U.S. and worldwide the last year or so. Seb, I can't believe it's been 5 years. You haven't aged a bit. I meant to say that. And Jed, to be quite honest, looking at you on the video side of this, which people will eventually see if they go to the YouTube channel, you haven't aged a bit either.
Oh yeah, sure. I feel like I've the presidential time frame, right, where they take the before and after. Yes. 7 years almost at IGEL.
Yes. I saw a picture of myself the other day before XenTegra started, and it was shocking. It's almost as shocking as when you're out having a happy hour and having a great time with people, and you walk in the restroom and you catch yourself in the mirror and go, "Whoa, who's that?
Who's that guy?
Who's that old guy?
Where'd that gray hair come from?"
I can't believe that this is the 67th episode of this in terms of just resilience and tenacity and focus. I just want to say on behalf of everybody at IGEL, Andy, thank you for the partnership. Right before the call, I heard that you were our first partner in the history of our Disrupt franchise to commit to joining us. So that was exciting news for me to learn that that you're going to be present with us in Nashville.
Sure.
In April. And this is a new feature to try to have the whole ecosystem represented there. So I can't say enough great things about your team and your company and the level of partnership that you bring every day to the IGEL solution. So thanks for having me on.
No, we absolutely enjoyed it. Jed, what's your favorite thing to do? What's your favorite hobby?
I actually love cooking. It's funny. I every time I get stressed out, I go cook, and I built a big outdoor kitchen during COVID. And right before this call, I actually went and brined my turkey. I have a 20-pound turkey. I brine it for 36 hours, and then I inject it, and then I smoke it. By the time I'm done with this thing, it tastes like you're eating duck. Wow. So I love to cook.
How many times have you cooked on your grill? Just do you know the number?
Oh, I have no idea. What's funny is during COVID, I was going to get this green egg, and then it was so back ordered because of the supply chain problem that I switched it to a red Joe Komodo that couldn't get that either. And then the barbecue guys called and said, "Hey, there's this aluminum version that the guy at barbecue guys designed. Would you like to buy it? It's twice the price." And I gritted my teeth that I bought it, and it has become the most legendary tool in my arsenal. This big aluminum smoker.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And I asked the question when I did because when it's something you love doing, like I don't know what podcast we're on, whether it's this one or some of the other ones, because it's just enjoyable. Like I love doing this. We learn, we share, we cut up, we have a good time.
That's
I don't know
good.
if it's the 5th one or the 500th one. You just don't know. Just like with grilling, you just don't know.
Exactly.
Well, let me share my screen here and we'll jump into today's content, which is a long time coming. Let me read the article title for the group. Uh-oh, my email pops up, of course. I have no idea what that is. All right. So the article is from the guys at CRN. And I guess Stephen Burke wrote it. I talk to Stephen all the time at conferences. And the title is Dream Come True, IGEL Exit Hardware Business. And then it's got a quote, I think from you, Jed. What's the backstory here? And then we'll jump into and how you got here.
Yeah, well, I think this is like I said, it is a dream come true, and it's a new chapter and a new day for IGEL. But when I joined IGEL in June of 2016, I joined because of the vision that Heiko laid out that, IGEL could be a software company. And that, we have this amazing IP that, needed to be revealed to the world and positioned and framed as such. And so, that it's been a little longer journey than I think and a few more bumps in the road than I, had anticipated. But to be able to say that, we took this sort of $50 million hardware company and inverted it into a software company and doubled the size of it. This is not a story that you hear every day. And so it's exciting. And I think it's also, it's a very special thing for us because we set out, back 7 years ago to move from number 7 in the US to number 3. And at that time, we were really competing against the same people that we're now partnering with, right? LG and Lenovo and HP. So it's kind of an amazing journey, right? To go from kind of this disruptor role to now partnering with these guys.
So what were you doing before that conversation that led you to see the reality of what this could be?
Well, I was in the end user compute world for a long time, early 2000s. I actually worked for a solution provider that was one of the largest Citrix resellers in the world. And then I left that company. I went to a company in Cleveland that was a large VMware end user compute player. Right around the same time, Sanjay joined and started reimagining what VMware could be in the end user compute space. And then I joined AppSense and was part of the team there that kind of brought the company to a pretty strong growth position and exited it to Landesk, now Ivanti. So I was literally looking around after I left Ivanti for what I wanted to do. Yeah. And obviously there was a lot of smart people that I was working with at Ivanti, and almost all of which actually told me to run as far away from IGEL as possible. Because if you remember in 2016, Elliott was in Citrix and they were in VMware, and VDI wasn't exactly a sexy place. We actually had positioned AppSense as more of a security solution than a VDI solution when we sold it to Landesk. And so, it took some amount of convincing from Heiko to get me to join the company. But what I saw was, and I did a lot of research, with different people, partners, and people that had been using the product. And it was just like, wow, this is a game-changing product. The fact that it's extensible to other hardware, the fact that it can manage at a precise policy level, it's sort of, it's a hidden jewel that's, sitting inside of a very, technical hardware marketing program. And so, when I originally started, Andy, I was the CMO and also the responsible as the CEO for North America.
Yeah. So let me do this real quick. I'll run around the horn here with the group so they can chime in. We'll start with Chris Feeney. Chris, why did this work? Why did this concept of decoupling? Well, let's forget about that for a minute. Why did the concept of IGEL take off the way it has? Just give me the best, most realistic answer you can.
So I was thinking about this while Jed was talking. When I first learned about IGEL, I knew about the thin client, but what really stuck out to me was when they had the repurposing solution. And I want to say, Jed, that was out there maybe before you joined. But I, as a field SC at the time and in Bravada, I was looking at some customers and I was like, wait a second, that's a game changer. And obviously Jed latched onto that idea that if you could take a device and turn it into a thin client of sorts, now you don't have to necessarily worry so much about the hardware as long as it's compatible. But that was really what stuck. And then obviously Jed coming in to kind of put some oomph behind it. I remember when I met Jed, I was the product manager at the time in Bravada, and I was putting my roadmap together. And the thing that stuck out to me was they've got somebody here that's going to take this. And I believe we need to start focusing on adding more support for a Linux-based endpoint. And that's kind of what I put my future out. But it was really that software-based focus initially that kind of struck me versus the hardware thin clients.
So Seb, same question to you. At what point did you realize the IGEL thing was going to work?
I would go back to my history. I was a customer of IGEL in the year 2006, 2006, if I remember right. I was responsible for the German bookstore, which is called Hugendubel, just a part of my history. And we started with IGEL as a thin client vendor with a part of software where we just focus on the hardware. What can the hardware can deliver? How many LPT1 ports can it deliver? How many display ports will it have? How many memory? How many CPU will it have? And then over, I would say, 6 to 10 years, we saw that the Universal Management Suite is growing and the amount of features implemented in that management tool was increasing a lot. Then in the second step, we moved, you can't believe it, but from the first Linux IGEL OS in that former time version 2 to Windows devices from IGEL. So it was really a long story, but yeah, keeping it short, we saw it when, in my opinion, at least the least moment where the IGEL solution was working better than before was during the chip outage. If you're seeing that different devices, different needed coming from the customer, coming from the market, couldn't be fulfilled anymore because of delivery issues regarding chip outage and so on. The software was really mattering because if you install our software on any kind of device, on every kind of hardware that is delivered on the market, the IGEL endpoint, the IGEL hardware is not mattering anymore. And that was the point where I really saw that that's the least moment where we had to switch from hardware to a pure software vendor.
Yeah. So Patrick, real quick, same question to you. What was the moment you knew this IGEL thing was going to work?
Yeah, for me, it was very similar to Chris. So I was working in healthcare on the customer side, and we were looking for a thin client solution to connect into our Citrix environment. And my boss was a big Lenovo guy, so he was like, "Listen, we want to, his charter was bring Lenovo in, see if we can, replace HP and their solution." And at the time, and this is back, quite a few years now, Lenovo was trying to push, there was a software called Latos, which we couldn't get to work. The thing was it just didn't work well. And then they were really pushing us to Windows, and we're like, no, that defeats the whole purpose of what we're looking to do. We don't want to manage Windows here and in the Citrix environment. And then I met a couple guys who worked at IGEL, one of them being Jeff Kahlberg, another one, Paul Finn, just guys that I go way back with. And they introduced IGEL into our environment. And it was just right away, as soon as I got into the management console, started to play around in there, I was used to packaging applications in SCCM. It would take me, a week to get it packaged, working well, a week to test it. And then in IGEL, I'm just checking a box. So for me, right away, I saw that. I was like, whoa, this is special. There's something here. And then also right around the same time, and Jed, you probably remember this well, that was when you were doing the Tesla giveaway. So the marketing was cool. That video, I think like Jeff Feige plays the chairman of the board, and that's just a hysterical video. And so it had the cool marketing campaign, all that. I was all in.
So guys, here's my answer to that question personally. When I saw somebody who cared enough to know that the thin client world, which was really software anyway, but the thin client world, software, hardware together, needed to get better, committed to it, and then most importantly, went to market with it, that's when I realized this thing was going to work. So Jed, help us understand the engineering concept behind going software and partnering with the hardware partners that you guys are going to be in with now that you're not going to be a hardware company?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said earlier, it's been an amazing kind of like flip, right? Where you're competing head to head in deal after deal with these same guys that we're now partnered with, right? And so it's been a remarkable kind of journey to where we are now, right? And it hasn't been easy. We had to work with them to get contracts signed and get them to a place where they were comfortable loading this Linux operating system on in their factory and certifying it. And you can imagine these companies are battleships, right? They're huge, and it doesn't happen overnight. But we were very persistent, and I think they saw the value in IGEL, right? Lenovo and HP and LG, and among others, right? There are some other hardware, smaller niche players in the hardware space, but it's really been about sort of just winning the hearts and minds at all levels in these companies, and it starts with customers, right? Like it should, right, Andy? You always got to listen to your customers, and I think there was enough very large customers, retailers, health, hospitals, that were basically asking for this. And to the credit of Lenovo, HP, and LG, they really listened.
So does this mean that you're more like Microsoft? And does this mean you're a competitor of Microsoft these days? Where do they fit into this new world of IGEL?
I mean, we really are a partner of Microsoft, right? And I think ultimately what we're doing is driving more of what they actually care about, which is, Azure, compute and data, and licensing in Azure, and new logos in Azure. And yes, they may not sell as many Windows, full Windows clients on the edge, but in the era of Satya, what's driving the value of Microsoft is obviously Azure. And I think we're very excited by the fact that there's a first party originated solution that Microsoft is putting their full weight behind it. And you may have seen this week, Scott Manchester is now responsible for both AVD and Windows 365. And we think this is great, right? I mean, so it is a little bit of cooperation, I would say, with Microsoft, but ultimately Microsoft is about moving the Windows workload into Azure is what I believe. And if IGEL can help with that, then that's where the market is headed.
So I have one comment for you on that, and then one question for that for our listeners. But it says everyone is on M365, which means Microsoft's still getting their money out of enterprises anyway, which is where your solution, enterprise, commercial, businesses, they're getting their client money anyway. So why do they care, right? They just want that Azure consumption to happen, and whether it's a Windows endpoint or not, it doesn't matter really to them anymore. And then, are you guys doing anything special? And you may not have the answer to this one, to help with the VDA, positioning the virtual desktop access license that comes along with, I guess, Windows as the endpoint, but not other.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Andy. So it was at Nashville Disrupt that it was actually October 1st. Microsoft had announced new licensing options where that had previously been a problem, and where it basically comes down to the type of Microsoft licensing that you have. And I don't have the article in front of me at the moment, but it would fall under certain things. And if you were on that licensing and it was like E something or whatever, again, it was all specified out.
E3 and E5.
Right. Then that VDA license that you previously need to have, what was a non-qualified OS on the endpoint, is no longer needed. And basically, some of the quotes that came out from resellers essentially was like, "This is great." They gave some examples, like they had some thin clients that this was an issue, and it was all about trying to get the customer into the cloud. So Microsoft has made a switch there to make it easier for that. And this came up with some of our LARs as well, as we kind of just educated. It was one of the first things I remember. I went to Chicago to just educate on the IGEL Microsoft story. And this is to the folks that are the Microsoft experts inside of that organization. This is the first thing that came up. Now, this is pre-October. This is like in the October or August timeframe. So a couple of weeks later, Microsoft announces this licensing change. And we went back to them and said, "Hey, just want to understand this is actually a new update. It's actually make it easier for customers to move forward with IGEL to then consume, Microsoft products in the cloud and not have to worry about this extra licensing. So I think that's a cheap, that used to be a VDA tax. And in some cases, it's still there based on the licensing, but that barrier is going away in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I really respect about Microsoft is the value they hold on building an ecosystem and trying to make sure that partners and technology partners can draft off of what they're doing. And we stood on the stage with Scott in 2019 when he announced the initial launch of what was called Windows Virtual Desktop. It's now Azure Virtual Desktop, but literally it was, we were among a very small elite ecosystem that was part of that original innovation partnership. And there's a significant percentage. You don't have to look very far, I think, to see that the in the world of VDI and thin clients, more than half of those devices are shipping with Linux, right? And so if you apply that same principle across the estate of 500 million PCs that are out there, the 150 to 200 million that are sold every year, we see a huge opportunity, right? To go with a lighter, more secure, easier to manage operating system and consume Windows as if it's an app out of Azure.
Yeah. So Jed, I'm looking at this section here. It says a new IGEL OS managed services era for partners, which is people like XenTegra, and we've covered the Microsoft Azure piece. I would also highlight in that conversation that even when I connect to XenTegra data center, I'm still running Microsoft, and so it really has taken the Microsoft competition conversation and really tamp that down when it comes to the endpoint, because Microsoft really didn't care. They're getting paid in some way along the way, no matter what, straight up AVD, Citrix talking to Azure, Citrix talking to my data center, Citrix talking to all the above, VMware talking to all the above. But then the rest of this article talks about how decoupling from the hardware opens up paths for IGEL and me, the partner, to go have kumbaya with the other hardware vendor of choice without having to start a fight. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that in a world where talent is hard to come by, and this technology can be somewhat challenging and brittle to manage, right? That there's a huge managed service opportunity, right? You look no further than what Citrix is doing, right? Where they're going to focus on their top 1,000 customers, right? Think about all the thousands of customers that sit below that, right? That are going to need support and services from companies like yours, right? And so I guess I see the whole world of VDI to DAS as sort of challenging the cost and the complexity of managing these solutions, right? And that there's a big opportunity for the channel. There always is, right? Because you're trusted, you're close to the technology, for you to really become the service engine to deliver these technologies, right? And that would include IGEL on the endpoint, whatever the protocol is that people want to deliver against. There's just a huge opportunity for companies to go to trusted sources like yourself and buy that service from you, right? If you look at Citrix, the fastest growing part of their business is actually the CSP business, right? And I think that will become even more of a storyline as they roll into 23 and focus on these top 1,000 customers, right? Like it's really going to be an opportunity for companies like yours.
So you mentioned this was a long time coming. This next section of the article talks about the road to exiting hardware. I have to assume, and tell me if I'm wrong or right here, that the current path and the path forward for all those customers that like buying IGEL hardware, that was something that had to be figured out, and that's what you're addressing in this portion of the article?
Yeah, well, I think it was a multi-step process, right? We really started by just projecting, hey, IGEL, the magic of IGEL is in the software. And you can repurpose devices. You can have even these big partners, when we were competing against them, that they were still shipping it out of their factory on customer demand. So that was kind of the first step. The second step was what we did with Arrow in 2021. Actually, right when we were acquired by TA, we signed a contract with Arrow that allowed us to sort of essentially get out of the hardware logistics business and the financial capital required to keep warehouses running in the US and in Germany. And so that was a substantial next step, right, where we were able to shut down our facilities and the teams of people that were doing light integration and packaging and shipping of this, and move all of that to Aero. And Aero actually has worked with a number of large software companies like Pure and Nutanix, and doing some of the same kind of things, right, where you help them take that working capital and put it back to work for us in software development. So it was a very big partnership move for us, and they handled all of the logistics worldwide for IGEL for the past 2 years. And during that time, we built these relationships up with LG, Lenovo, and HP, and we really have made sure that there's a path out of our current hardware platforms to devices that are fit for purpose, as good or better than the IGEL devices. And so that's been part of, if you go to igel.com/LG, HP, or Lenovo, you'll see the sort of 3 devices that we recommend, the path out of IGEL. Yeah. So this has been sort of a 3-phase process. I say, Andy, it was first, hey, we're a software company. Secondly, it was like, let's get hardware off our books. And then now where we are today, which is, we have these very sturdy tier 1 partnerships. And the other thing I will say about these partnerships is that we're seeing more and more use cases where companies, it's fascinating. It's like an entire retail tire store that just says we're going to laptops, even in the stores, right? And so we're seeing more and more demand for non-box type, but devices that have screens, so laptops and all-in-ones. And of course, IGEL is never going to succeed building a laptop or an all-in-one, right? This is just not a business focus for us. And so I think that was another big market driver that really pushed us towards these tier 1 device manufacturers.
And I think the big takeaway for customers of IGEL and whatever hardware vendor it is, that you're going to get the best of the software, and you're going to get the hardware of your choice. It's not totally, in my world, unlike what Tesla did, where they gave away all their patents because they really want an ecosystem to grow up around the work they had done, and willing to share that with everybody and give away that little bit of hardware money for the sake of where the software was going and the driving of the business for everyone.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it hasn't been easy, right? Because we're the number 1 thin client player in Germany. That business is profitable. The business that we had in the US is profitable, right? And literally as we speak, we're still the number 1 thin client company in Germany. And so, that's kind of a bold move, on our part to walk away from that. But ultimately, where we want to be is agnostic to hardware, agnostic to protocol, and literally just delivering the most secure, easiest to manage, most cost-effective way to consume, VDI, DAS, or SaaS. And that's where we're headed, right? And having our foot sort of halfway in still producing hardware, this was it just made it more difficult to build these really good partnerships. One of the core values of IGEL is partnership, right? And I hope you feel that inside of your organization. We like to believe that we understand how to partner and how to approach win-win partnerships, whether it's with customers or resellers or anyone in our ecosystem. And having the sort of pollution that having our own branded hardware was creating as we try to lift up these other partnerships, we just realized this is not who we are.
And I should have done a better job in the beginning. I'm a firm believer in making the following comment to make sure everybody's aware of there's thin client operating system, and then there's thin client hardware, which is just pretty much the same stuff in a different manufacturer's box coming from probably the same places, whether it's high end or low end. There's the thin client hardware, thin client operating system. Once you think of a thin client as being 2 things, the ability to uncouple one from the other and have an intelligent conversation about one side or the other becomes a huge reality. We're kind of ahead of schedule, or we're on time with the podcast. podcast here. I want to go around the horn here. I'll start with Seb. Seb, based on what we've talked about so far, what would you ask Jed? What would you like to make sure we cover yet?
I would say from the question that I'm getting in the Agile community is how will the partnership grow over the next years? Because I know from the German market, because you already mentioned it, Jed, that they're quite a traditional approach to say that they're all buying from one hand. So having the hardware, the software, the services delivered by the vendor itself. But now they're already asking what are the next steps. I mean, HP, Lenovo are one piece, but what are the next steps that you are planning? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's really about the next chapter of growth is really building purposeful hardware with Citrix, with VMware, with Microsoft, right? And so there's like the next opportunity, I think, is, you know, when you look at OS 12 and the onboarding and unboxing, and just really leaning into images that are specific with Microsoft or Citrix and tuned for specific use cases and workflows. I think that's where we're headed, Seb. So there's like, a lot of discussion around bundles, just making it easier for customers to, embrace this technology. There's too much complexity still to this day, right? We want to make it easier. As if we want to get, 80 million people using IGEL every day, it needs to be more intuitive, right? It needs to be easier to unbox and just connect to these solutions. Today, there's too much tuning and, POCs that last a year. I mean, Andy, you know this, and I know Patrick, you know it too, right? There's too much work that has to be done today to get some of this stuff up and running. Now, granted, once you get it up and running, you get all the savings and security benefits. But I think that's the next evolution, Seb, is we got to make this easier to consume and ultimately more of a mainstream set of use cases.
Music to my ears. And for all the listeners, if you didn't watch the recording until now, we have a great OS 12 story recorded by Mali and myself. So if you want to join, videos.agilcommunity.com, and there we have a great story about the OS 12 topic that Jed just mentioned.
I mean, it needs to be consumer simple, right? I think that's got to be the model. We got to get to a place. And I know, Andy, we talk a lot about benchmarking IGEL against a Chromebook, right? And just sort of, we got to get the management console into a frame that's fully hosted. And I think that's where IGEL can put its efforts now, right? So we take a lot of the lift and investment that we've had over the years that's tied up in, moving boxes around the world to really solving a scaling and simplicity problem.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to be tied up in having your debt, your technology debt in hardware. If you can help it, you can be much more progressive in the software world, especially talking to clouds. Patrick, same question to you. Anything that we haven't covered so far with Jed that you'd want to make sure we called out here?
Yeah, my question is along the same lines of what Seb just asked, and you kind of touched on, Jed, but the timing of this right before OS 12 is set to come out. Is there going to be, you mentioned like making it easier, for example, to push an easy config. Can you talk through that a little bit, like some of that vision and how it relates to, specifically getting out of the hardware business and just relying on the partners? Like what type of things will OS 12 have that will specifically kind of make that experience better for customers? I don't know how much you're able to talk about it at this point.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty, there's a few key things that I can definitely share. That there's an app portal, right? So one of the things we're going to do is, all the Linux distributions, and there's a very long list of them. And I'd like to believe that we've risen to the top of that list. But all of them have been basically delivering kind of a monolithic firmware, right? Where all of these drivers are kind of crocheted into the into an update, right? And that process has become challenging, right? Especially at the speed at which agile development and collaboration apps and all the things you need to have parity with windows and make sure that you address as many work loads as possible, right? And so I think where we're headed with OS 12 with this app portal, where you can have a base OS and you can have the key applications that are certified by IGEL in an app portal, and you can just pull down the things you need. This is revolutionary, right? Because it's got compatibility intelligence in it, and it reduces, once again, the operating system so that you have a much smaller attack surface. And I think it sort of also helps us from a development perspective, because guess what? We're publishing an SDK to our partners. And so a lot of the work that we were typically doing now can get extended out into our ecosystem. We can have more partners. We can move faster with the updates. And you're not waiting for, a private build or the mainline build to show up. So I think that's going to revolutionize things. We also have an insights engine, right? We collect a lot of data on a device. And so I think you're going to see in OS 12 some visualization of the insights and some capacity for customers to see right down to the device level, how's it working, and help diagnose some of the challenges that people are having as they manage devices that are all over the place. In concert with some of our partners like ControlUp, Liquidware, Lakeside. So I think, the insights, the app portal, and then the onboarding, which I just mentioned, I think that's going to be a big one. Seb probably knows a few others that I'm missing, but those are kind of like the three that I think are going to be, kind of revolutionize the IGEL experience.
So I want Chris to go, but before he goes, I just want to highlight that, Jed, what you just talked about there, and up leveling and focusing on making the thin client user experience better and more manageable. Those other guys were never going to get there because they just didn't care. Now they can go sell their hardware in a solution that's driving forward, just like Windows has been selling their hardware for all these years. I mean, that's just a win-win for everybody, and really jumps into the next section where the hardware makers see the big opportunity ahead working with you guys. Chris, I promise I'll come back to you. Jed, that says a lot about what this section of the article talks about, which is where the hardware guys get to come along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardware guys have basically seen that, it's a benefit to the whole industry if we can rally around one kind of leading Linux platform. And I think it's more than just the OS, right? It's really, it's the OS, it's the management console, it's the web services that are going to come alongside this. And so, I think they can focus on what they're really good at. And, we can build unique value into our integrations together. And, there's a big opportunity, of course, right at this very moment, as we fully exit and we sell through our remaining hardware. There's several 100,000 devices that we sell every year just in Germany, right? And so that's a unique situation, right, where all of a sudden the number one market position is available to one of these, to all of them to kind of go carve up. So I think that's a compelling thing, right? IGEL's done a really good job over a long period of time managing this sort of mid-market SMB, middle stock German market, where Seb came out of the bookstore, typical IGEL customer, right, in Germany. And so I think this is a very unique situation for HP and Lenovo and LG to sort of, to latch on to this very valuable customer base that IGEL's had for 21 years.
Yeah, I do love the fact that you're going to help HP, Lenovo, LG, and others really come up with a solution that fits the enterprise, fits the SMB, fits everybody who's really playing hard in this delivered compute space, versus pretty much the other solutions kind of solved enterprise challenges, kind of, sort of. But didn't really seem to care about going any further than that. Enterprise was entry level solving. Go ahead.
A good point. I mean, one of the things we found ourselves doing is actually giving a lot of advice to these hardware guys on the spec that is going to deliver the best experience, right? Especially now that everybody's got table stakes of collaboration. And so one thing why we did so well was we kind of understand the software workload. and we were able to build hardware that was at the right time, at the right moment, sized correctly. And so I think that's been one of the gifts of getting closer to these guys, is helping them, spec the right memory and chipset in these hardware devices so that they can be delivered into the market and not be underpowered, right? Because I think I'm sure you've all on this call suffered from customers who have bought devices that just can't run collaboration. And so, yeah, this has been another gift that IGEL's driving into Lenovo and HP and LG is,
they, in a lot of cases, they didn't even know they were missing features that you guys have had for 10 years.
Right.
So, Chris, I promised I'd come back to you. We covered a lot. We got one more section here to cover, which we talked a little bit about already. What do you want to ask Jed about this?
So I'm sorry, I'm in the car, but the things I was thinking about, because there's obviously this was coming, but we I don't think we've talked about it, but the UD Pocket is still going to be available from a hardware perspective. That's the one piece we are going to keep. That's a really cool use case scenario. But for Jed, I guess I was thinking about a couple of things, two-part question. What's the general reaction been since the announcement went out for both public and obviously their partners and customers? And then the second part, a year from now, what do you see? Where do you see IGEL in the world and other market factors that are kind of timing this just right?
Yeah, so the response from the customers have been overwhelmingly positive, right? I mean, there's always a little bit of hand holding around RMAs and warranties and things like that, but overwhelmingly, people are like confident with the brands that we're pointing them at and the choices that they have there. And in some cases, because of supply chain, they're even more readily available and they're even less expensive than the IGEL product. So I think that's been overwhelmingly positive from across the board. And yeah, a year from now, I mean, my aspirations for IGEL are significant growth and scale and adoption of our operating system, and seeing Lenovo and HP bring us into some of these really large enterprise accounts. And then also I think the other aspiration I have is that you start to see IGEL being used in more knowledge worker and kind of laptop type scenarios, right? Call centers that are moving into the home environment. Just lots of new use cases that the DaaS model and the work from anywhere have brought for us. So I think that's ultimately, I want to see IGEL get to 1 million seats a year and break that barrier. And of course, just keep on this sort of very strong double-digit growth, and break the rule of 40 that great software companies do. And so that's what we're aspiring towards, right? And I think all along the way, keeping the core values that have made the company so great, right? Which is trust and integrity and partnership and innovation, and doing it with a servant's heart. Showing up in a very authentic way, very approachable and humble, and driving against those core values.
Yeah, I just wanted to hit the last part, that mobile platform. I committed myself, once I got an LG Gram and I also got a Lenovo device, to carry that with me everywhere I go. And because we were using AVD internally, the really kind of hammering on the user experience. Andy and I and Patrick, we talk about this a lot with Seb as well. If it's not usable, if it's terrible, they'll reject it. And what's really been amazing is, I've experimented this. When Andy had the XenTegra kickoff last year in Nashville, I brought my LG Gram with the UD Pocket. I brought up the Edge browser and ran the Teams call and the presentation from the IGEL device. No AVD in this case, and it worked really well. And then we were at Aero a few weeks back, and I had a 5G connection on my phone using my AVD out of the Netherlands, doing a Teams optimization call with Microsoft and other folks from IGEL, and it worked just fine. No issues, no latency. And so that's the user experience when you can, and I think when people get a chance to experience that, it will be readily adopted. And obviously the stuff we're working on to onboard rather rapidly with OS 12, that's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about
we
that.
have several hundred people that are using IGEL every day inside of IGEL now. And I think that's serving us well in terms of, shipping our own champagne. And it's great to see how quickly features get added and things get fixed when your own people are complaining about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think nothing really says this story of decoupling the OS and then giving you options for the hardware better than the mobile device, the laptop scenario. You guys went from a laptop option or two, which wasn't the best hardware on the planet in form factor, to now there's probably 20 laptops that are just in the HP, Lenovo, and LG world. They give customers choices, and then there's a whole bunch more beyond that that are outside of those three that is now IGEL ready because of the move away from hardware. That's a great part of the story.
Yeah. And I think we've sent out hundreds of laptops this year, Andy, and any of your listeners that, want one, should go to the IGEL website and you can get any of this hardware. We'd love to ship it to you and, have you test it because, that's like Chris just said, that's the best way to experience this stuff. And so, especially laptops, I think a lot of people, never kind of realize, oh, well, if it's a laptop, I need Windows on it, right? No, you don't. Actually, that creates a lot of cost, right? When you stack a bunch of agents on there and all the people to manage it, put IGEL on it, right? And you've got a lot of good choices, like you just said right now.
Yeah. So, Jed, we've talked about it throughout this conversation around where you're going with the OS. What have we left out, if anything, that people should expect out of the IGEL OS and its continued evolution of use cases?
Well, I can only tell you that the team in Augsburg we continue to invest there, right? We actually have 2 development centers now, one in Karlsruhe, and then we're moving into a new building in Augsburg. And so, I think you're just going to see us continue to double down, listen to customers. We have an OS 12 beta that's running right now, kind of an open beta, and we have customer councils, partner councils. We're listening to our constituents, I would say, and this is one thing that's made this company great. When I got here, I was like, how did all these features, the 10,000 settings that you can manage from the console, how did they get there? Well, it's one of the core values of IGEL. It's like we're really good at listening, and so I think that you can count on us to continue to listen to customers and try to create a solution that can fit their needs. And this is the next chapter of scaling of IGEL, I think, is going to come through these hardware relationships, and also being in sort of a pole position for innovation with Linux, with Citrix, with VMware, with Microsoft, and even with Amazon, right? We're still talking to these guys, and there are still use cases where Amazon can fit. And so, that it's all about agnostic to hardware, great relationships, take your pick, and same thing with the protocol on the side of it. So
I'm going to add one other piece of that we haven't talked about, and that's just the world of browser-based SaaS apps. It's in the like NPR does how I built this podcast series, and they always ask at the end, are you lucky or are you good? And a lot of times that lucky and good comes down to timing as well. And I think you guys have timed it very well in terms of where the world of delivered compute's going and is versus the hypothetical that it would have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, we'd like to be able to meet customers where they are, right? You got people that are still on-prem with VDI. They want to look at DAS. Okay, we got you covered, right? You want to move to a SaaS, or you want to mix all 3 together on the same device. We can do that for you, right? And we can do it across any hardware. That hardware breaks, you can move that license to another device. And I will say one thing, I think everybody should be aware of is we're going to make a bigger investment in making sure that the user experience, whether it's the end user who's consuming this environment or the actual IT administrator, we are putting more intellect around the UI And so, I know Patrick, you and Chris have spent, and Seb, you guys all spend a lot of time inside of the user interface. And while it's very utilitarian and it does exactly what it's supposed to do, it's not always, the most modern and elegant. So you're going to see several places inside of the product where, the user experience is going to get modernized through HTML.
It's pretty German. It's pretty gray. It's quite functional.
Yes.
But it's not really fancy. Let's call it this way.
Exactly. So we've got some designers. We're working on it, and I will just tell you, I just took over again as our CMO, and so very focused on the sort of end-to-end journey inside of IGEL, and so I'm back to being a CEO/CMO, and this is stuff I care about. You asked me what gets me excited, Andy. Picking the right font, the right color, getting the call to actions right, and having that sort of great user experience from the moment you hit our website to when you light up the product.
So I heard somebody the other day on a podcast call it the secure thin edge, and that includes hyperconverge in some places. That includes the endpoint at some places. Thin, secure edge is where all this needs to go. And if you can turn that into a sexy marketing term, so be it. Yeah,
I'm working on it. I love the blog that they wrote on the Brian Madden website when I first started. They had a whole thing about how IGEL made thin clients sexy again.
And that's probably what I would say is if you ask me where I want to go work tomorrow, if I had to stop XenTegra, I'd come work for a thin client vendor, which to say that in 2022, almost 23 is kind of crazy, but I love what you guys have done.
Andy, I thought you worked for us.
No, I'm the cheapest employee you've ever had. Kind of.
Well, I want to make sure before we end, Andy, that we really invite everybody to what I think is going to be a very special event in April. I know it's a ways out, given that we're sitting here at the end of November, but April 3rd through the 5th, we are going to have what I think is what the industry needs, and that's a meetup of Microsoft, Citrix, VMware, Lenovo, HP, LG, and probably about 35 to 40 other ecosystem partners, all focused on what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes, end user compute. I think there's events out there that are big and sexy, but they all usually are have a marginalized position for end user compute. Citrix is not doing Synergy this year, and so I want to invite all your listeners to register. We're giving out a special deal right now. It's $199 if you register before the end of the year for the event. But I'm going to tell you, all your listeners, I know they're all smart people, so if they type in the code MASTER, they can have it for $150. And this is a 3-day event that will have a lot of great content. It'll have an expo hall. It will have technical boot camps from Microsoft, Citrix, and VMware.
And that's really the gist of this whole conversation, is when you are pretty much able to play along with everybody, including the direct competitors, you really can drive an industry event that used to be led by industry gorillas. Now it's, an ecosystem player that brings everybody together.
It's not really an IGEL commercial so much as it's an opportunity. We're going to have a lot of customers there telling, their story, sharing, best practices and where they want to see the industry go. So, and I'm going to enforce this, Andy. It's like, if you're going to come on the main stage, you're going to need to bring a customer in your locked in your arms. We're also trying to make it a very sustainable event. We're going to have a lot of conversations around sustainability, and we're trying to do some things so that we don't burn the environment up. Putting 1,500 people in Nashville. So look for us to do that. And try to put on an event that has a light footprint and also drives the conversation, which, we think we're part of around sustainability.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've used up our time, but I do want to, Chris, if you have anything, Seb, if you have anything, Patrick, if you have anything else, is there anything that we got Jed on the spot we want to ask him somewhat succinctly before we let him go?
I would say as soon as you're ready, I would be happy to have you, but that's something that you already promised, so to say, to have you joining the Agile community to tell us a little bit more about that decision, because I know that a couple of people are getting scared a little bit about that change. Not saying that I do personally, but I know from the Central European market that it's a change which caused a little bit of, yeah, let's say fears partially. So as if you would have some time or motivation, I would
I
like
always
to.
have time for your community.
Love you.
I can't believe that it's 5 years in the making, and so yeah, I'd love to do
Yeah.
that. And anytime, let's do it. And
Perfect.
yeah, what do we have to fear but fear itself?
Definitely. Just maybe a lack of information. I mean, I'm trying to share as much as possible of information inside of the community, but still we have some customers who are pretty old-fashioned, who are not even knowing that Agile is focusing on software. Don't ask me why, don't ask me where the information got lost, but they are still thinking we are a hardware vendor with a part of a software, and that's still sometimes a hard topic to bring through.
This is the gift of having no more Agile hardware on the shelf, right? They have to recognize, oh, why does this work so well? It must be the software, right? So
exactly.
We'll work through it with them, and I definitely love to do that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jed, you need to believe it's all about the software shirt or something like that. I'm sure it's coming.
Exactly.
Well, guys, thank you for taking the time, Jed, as always. I love this week actually of the year. I get more work done this week than any other time. I know you got a couple more hours left on the West Coast, but enjoy your holiday, and we'll talk to this group again in a week. Thank you.
Well,
Happy
thank you for having me
guys.
on. Keep up all the good work out there. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving. Take care.
Nice,
Bye.
guys.